Good evening, and welcome to the NAACP Milwaukee Northside debate for 2020. My name is Gerard Randall, and I will be moderating tonight's candidates debate. Earl Ingram Jr. will not be joining me to moderate this important and at times controversial debate and forum as originally scheduled. This debate will be broadcast over YouTube on the Milwaukee Branch NAACP, under the Milwaukee Branch NAACP. Also, there will not be any question and answers from the attendees. I'd like to start by explaining some procedures for tonight's debate and forum, which each candidate has received ahead of time. You will have 2 minutes for an opening statement and 1 minute to answer each question. The timekeeper is virtual. When there is 15 seconds left on your speaking time, the timekeeper will inform me, and I will indicate that you have 15 seconds left to answer your question. Please wrap up your statement. If you continue speaking after 1 minute, I will say thank you and move on to the next question. Please note, personal references about other candidates, whether present or not, are out of order. The debate and forum order is based on Assembly District candidates by district number, State Senate District, and then U.S. Congressional District. So let's begin. Our first candidate up is Orlando Owens. Mr. Owens is running for District 11, Assembly District. Welcome, Mr. Owens.
Hello, Gerard. I'm coming in now. I didn't get a chance to hear all the rules of it. I don't know if you have an opportunity. We had a little bit of a technical delay, but I see you. So how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing great this evening. So please begin by giving our audience an understanding of why you are running for the Assembly District 11 seat. And limit your remarks to 2 minutes, please.
Okay. Gerard, I want to make it quick because I didn't hear all the groundwork for the rules. So I want to make sure I don't do anything I shouldn't do. But in a nutshell, why I'm running is because there's an opportunity for real leadership to rise up from our community. I'm a community guy. I've been here most of my life in Milwaukee, and it's just time for some things to be different in how we approach and solve issues. And so there's no great time to step up. There's always times, unfortunately, we find ourselves in times of great chaos, and that's when leadership must rise up and say, how do I help? And that's kind of where I am. But like I said, if you could just quickly repeat the ground rules for me again.
Essentially, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement, and then each question that I ask, you have 1 minute to answer. If within that 1 minute time frame, you begin to run over, you will be notified towards the last 15 seconds of that 1 minute that you are approaching your finish time. And if you go over, please know that I will then move on to the next question for you. The other important rule is that you not reference any other personalities that are running for office during your statements.
I got you. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So the
Fair
first
enough.
question, what additional measures or legislation would you advocate the state take to help Milwaukee reduce its COVID-19 total cases and deaths?
Well, I think we look at I'm a very local government guy. And so I don't necessarily agree with a statewide approach. I think it's going to be county by county approach. What I would like to see more additionally is how we do testing and the turnaround time for those testing. I don't necessarily support even on our local level because we see there is a, let's say, variance of opinion between state officials and our local officials. So I'm much more of a local, our local CDC person, our local health department here. I want to see them be more proactive, and also for local businesses and each entity to do a lot of the social distancing precautionary things that need to be in place. Just more of a robust approach to how we do it locally here, case by case, city by city, and also having the companies and also of all of our major entities from hospitals, even in our schools and how we do in school. I think we need to be much more fluent in how we approach it. It is a very serious thing. Let me be clear about that, but also want to be able to balance our everyday life, even going back to work. Work environment should also have precautionaries in place as well too. I like the approach currently we have. If I say it that way, I like what we're seeing right now. Don't necessarily agree with some of the bar restrictions maybe, but I am somewhat okay with the current tack right now, how we're trying to go systematically through this very tough time right now.
All right, thank you. The second question, how can you help the state reduce the cost of healthcare to make it more affordable for low-income Milwaukeeans?
So for me, I think the biggest thing for me is to look at how I want to have more people working, right? So my big thing for my campaign is really about getting people working, more gainful employment. The more people we have paying into taxes, the more opportunity we can cover and drive down the costs. One of the reasons why the cost is so high because we have fewer people paying into it. Also looking at how we do our whole entire healthcare industry, from the how we do testing and examinations. We need to have more transparent cost evaluations of how we do, let's say, something as simple as getting the x-ray. But primarily so getting more people back into that taxable pool of people. For Wisconsin on the state level, state revenue is based on two things: sales tax and income tax. And so we got to get more people working into that pool that would drive down the cost, because we have more people working that can contribute to the overall taxable income we have for our state. And so I think that's one of the big reasons for me, is to get more people working to pay into the pool to drive down the cost.
All right. Would you support having a nonpartisan, independent redistricting commission to draft and implement electoral district maps?
So for me, I am more focused on running great candidates that reflect the district as which you're running in, and the values and concerns of a local community. I have no problem talking with people who may have input on how maps should be drawn. I do understand the state constitution that, the party, whatever it has that is currently in power, has the ability to draw the maps. Now, taking suggestions from third-party groups or community-based groups, I have no problem talking with anyone on how the maps should be drawn, but I don't necessarily have a problem with the current makeup. We should have more input. I agree with that, but I think the responsibility should stay where it is right now. It does have more insight and more input. I'm for community roundtables on maps. I'm for as many people coming to the table as possible, and I think that is still the right approach. I think that's what the third-party groups really want, is just more of a transparent and more of a full discussion on how maps should be drawn. So I'm for that, but I am more concerned on having candidates who reflect the district. I think when we talk about the map drawing, we're getting ready to, what we're really trying to get to is the issue of, let's call it gerrymandering. That's what we're really talking about here, of how do we shift the lines of who has most representation and power. I am more focused on, like myself, running candidates that reflect the 11th Assembly District, that reflect the ideas of a local community. I'm more focused on that.
Thank you. What can be done to improve Wisconsin's criminal justice institutional system, the cradle to jail pipeline?
Where should we start? From employment, I think, once again, my big thing is employment, getting people sustainable jobs that are family sustaining. If you can't find a good paying job, in a community, you're going to eat one way or the other, and that means by any means necessary. I also look at how important mental health is in our community, that we need to have more access to mental health abilities, and also connecting to institutions that can help us with this issue. I look at how we do schools. Our local schools, we suspend Black kids, Black males in particular, way too much because we have let's say a disconnect on how Black males or males in general operate in a classroom environment. I think for me, the big thing is how we also look at our criminal justice system. We are from 53206. I'm right outside of that zip code. We are the most highly incarcerated zip code in the country, and for that matter, in the world, and right here in Milwaukee. How we do deferred prosecution, how we do bail, how we do first time offenders program, how we do one of the highest things, revocations, not new charges, but conditions that a person has. We got to look at how we even do probation and parole or extended supervision. This whole thing needs to be looked at. For me, the R in Republican means reform, and that means reform across every institution that we have in our government, from education to healthcare to incarceration, the whole thing, employment. We need the R to stand for reformations and reforms, in my opinion.
Thank you. Do you believe Milwaukee is receiving its adequate level of state shared revenues?
I think we need to look at how we do revenues in general. Once again, we need to look at getting more people to become homeowners. And so we're not so reliant on property taxes, but also having people to be back into that taxable pool of people, getting people who have more employment and good paying jobs. I think once that happens, we need to look at how we do divvy up money throughout the state of Wisconsin. I think as Milwaukee is being the biggest tax base in the state, we need to recognize that. And I also understand, on the other hand, Milwaukee is the biggest tax spender of those resources. So you can be two things at once, which is we provide the most taxes to the state of Wisconsin. We also spend the most taxes. But I also understand that we are a very compassionate people. If a smaller county in our state needs help, people from Milwaukee doesn't have a problem helping them out, and nor should those counties that have, maybe let's say more disposable or have, more resources. If we need more help, then we should be able to do that. There's a way that we can find common ground. It should not be so combative that, we can't find a pathway forward. And I believe my candidacy, having the trust of Republicans and the respect of Democrats, bring their very unique opportunity right here to talk about how do we get more funds here to our city, but also to be a good steward of what we ask the people already, that our programs and our initiatives, they should have to work to help people to actually get them to the next level. Or we need to also be very conscious of this, that if these are programs that are going to be longstanding, like let's say healthcare for people who are, let's say, retired or underemployed, we should always have enough income to support them, because if our main focus once again is having people have great paying jobs, we would have the needed revenue to continue supporting our programs.
All right. Do you believe that the city of Milwaukee's downtown revitalization initiative contributed to the Northside's affordable housing disparity?
I think we had a tremendous focus on downtown and not enough into the communities. And when that happens, you have communities of color like I represent. For the most part, we do have a small piece of Glendale, but that made those local communities suffer. When we have local, I'm trying to say within the rules, when we have a difference of opinion on where resources should be going locally, and we put them more toward the downtown and forget about the neighborhoods, you can't have a downtown without a bustling neighborhood. We need to have people working. There's nothing downtown that people like myself, and I grew up in the communities, I grew up in poverty, grew up on AFDC and the welfare program. If we don't have disposable income to be a part of the downtown landscape, then who are you building the downtown landscape for? The people in the district that I'm running for is a very diverse people, but we also have a high level of unemployment and people who are at the poverty line or just below it or just above it. Nonetheless, there's no downtown that we can participate in if we don't have a bustling community around downtown, meaning we have to have the resources we need, job opportunities here for our people, so that, downtown can also be an extension of the neighborhoods. You shouldn't be in downtown, then you step one step foot out of downtown and it's like, a whole other world. Like, what is that? And that is a lack of leadership and also a lack of vision.
So will you push through the budget or legislative process to have the state provide financing to create Milwaukee jobs, to remove lead laterals that are disproportionately poisoning children, Black and brown?
So let's be clear, and I know that some of the people may not necessarily agree with me, that the Republicans are the majority here in our state of Wisconsin. And yes, we do have a governor that they both have to agree and work together. Unfortunately, right now, their relationship is definitely, hard to get along with, to say the least. I understand that, what the legislative power is, which is Republicans have the vast majority of the votes, and we're quickly approaching a supermajority, and that is the fair truth. Now, I would definitely support the idea of supporting ideas to get money to our city that help support what money the city's already spending. But the city first in Milwaukee must show me and also the surrounding counties, if I'm going to be an advocate, that the city of Milwaukee is adequately putting money toward the right place in the right way, and then the state can come in to support the further need to expand spending to repair lead laterals. So in a nutshell, yes, I would support that.
And then finally, are you a member of the NAACP? And if so, for how long?
I am. I've been on and off again, a member for a while. Sometimes you go through tough times and you have to look at your money sometime. I've been an in and out member also of the Urban League. And also I'm a lifelong, well, to the best of my knowledge, my grandparents said, a member of the Church of God in Christ and also the Baptist community. So I am a proud member of the NAACP. Been on again, off again for probably over 10 years of my life.
Well, thank you, Mr. Owens, for articulating your vision for District 11.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate you all. NAACP, continue doing what you're doing. You have my full support and you have an ally.
Now I'd like to welcome District 12 candidate, Dr. Lakeisha Myers. Welcome, Dr. Myers.
Hello, Gerard. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. Please articulate for those who are listening and watching what your vision is for District 12.
My vision for District 12 is to expand on the beauty and the vibrance that exists within our district currently. I grew up in District 12, and it is a place that is complete with a hardworking middle-class people, a lot of professionals that live in the district, homeowners that live in the district. But I think over the years, some of the things that we've lost have been a lot of the localities and places for entertainment space that we've had. I've been working with our local officials and with our wonderful Granville bid to make sure that we start to rebuild those things. So those are some of the things that I hope to see in the future as we move forward with District 12, making sure that we revive our business district, if you will, again. So making sure that we are accessible to the people that live there, and also to have folks come up and join us. And I think we do that by investing in small businesses, making sure that we, kind of rebrand ourselves. One of our alderpersons has said it's the new ninth if you live on a certain end of the district. And I think that shows that when you look at the Brown Deer Road corridor, slowly but surely, it has started to bustle again. We have industry that is on that particular street. Again, we have small businesses that have come to that particular area. We have new restaurants that have been with us within the last year to 2 years that are thriving in the neighborhood. And there are plans, according to the city charrette that we have, to move forward and make sure that those things are happening in our district. So that's some of the vision that I have for us. I think I always call the district the key to the city, because if you look on the map, the shape of it, it's a key. And I said, we are the best kept secret. You can get suburban living with a city address right in District 12.
Well, thank you. So my first question to you is, what additional measures or legislation would you advocate the state take to help Milwaukee reduce its COVID-19 total cases and deaths?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I would hopefully have the legislature actually act. As a body, we were done in February, on February 20th, to be exact. That was one of the earliest stopping times that we've had. We only came back in session virtually on April 13th, I believe it was to pass a mandatory measure for the state for us to receive funds. However, that was 3 weeks after the CARES Act passed, and there was nothing that was done by the leadership with the legislature to make sure that we had access, and we lost out actually on $25 million that this state could have used to deal with unemployment insurance. So I would say making sure that we actually, number one, take action is the first thing. The second thing I think we should do would be to pass one of the bills that I introduced, which is AB 62, which is Prescription Drug Management Act. So making sure that we lower the cost of our prescription drugs and hold prescription drug companies, responsible for the things that they're doing by not changing the rates of drug costs midstream in the middle of the year or as they see fit every year, because that can put an undue burden on people in our community. So that's one of the first two things I would do. And also update the system that we have for DWD to the infrastructure that we have with the telephone service and go to a 3-shift system. That is something that I did request on several occasions, and that was something that was not done, quite frankly. So I think we dropped the ball in that respect as well, making sure that the telephone gets answered every time someone calls, and we're not dropping calls to make sure that that happens. So I think
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
something that we need to do.
I just want to remind you that we have several questions to get through. You have 1 minute for each.
Okay.
How can the state help reduce the cost of healthcare to make it affordable for low-income Milwaukeeans? And part of the response that you just gave pretty much answers that question, but would you like to add anything else to that?
I would like to add to that. In addition to passing this prescription drug bill, I would say that the first thing we could do was to accept the Medicaid expansion. It is money that we have already paid into as a state as we work, and we are leaving funds on the table, and people are hurting. When you look at the fact that 23,000 people during COVID-19, have lost coverage or have signed up for state issue coverage under Badger Care, I think that's something that is a significant number, and we need to look at that. We don't know how long COVID-19 will be around. We don't know how long it will take us to overcome this. And I think as we continue to be neglectful, we have to do something about that. So I really want my colleagues to do something about that and make sure that we address those issues, because we're leaving people's lives in the balance.
Thank you. And would you support having a nonpartisan, independent redistricting commission to draft and implement electoral district maps?
Absolutely. I support the governor's Fair Maps Commission. I like the fact that there are no politicians on the Maps Commission. I think the people have the prowess and the ability to draw equitable maps. I think both parties, whether Republican or Democrat, have been, purveyors of gerrymandering. Some more than others. But when you look at the fact that our maps have been cracked and neighborhoods have been packed together and people who live on the same street go to different polling locations and may not even be in the same legislative districts, I think there's something wrong with that. I think that it gives any party an unfair advantage, and it's something that we need to address and let the people decide who their representatives are and not us.
Thank you. What can be done to improve Wisconsin's criminal justice institutional system, the cradle to jail pipeline?
The first thing I think we need to do is to not just throw money at infrastructure when it comes to the Department of Corrections, and more specifically juvenile corrections. I think when we look at how the Act 185 was done, or better yet, left undone, there was funding that was available to build a new juvenile prison, but then there was no funding to deal with alternative measures that would stop youth from being offenders. I think when you look at mechanisms in the Office of Juvenile Justice Discipline Program that exists, we've not had adequate funding for that to be deterrents for our youth. So I think looking at things like youth court, programs that they have in other places that have been successful, making sure that we have alternatives to suspension, even in schools, making sure that those things are available. So stopping that at the beginning and not having to deal with it on the opposite end is something that we could do. I also think that when you look at the amount of money that we spend in the Department of Corrections, we could save money with the DOC if we were to really institute probation and parole. The governor has started that process back up. However, I would like to see the parole board have more people to facilitate more parole hearings and make sure that those that were incarcerated under old law get out, and also to have individuals not be sent back to prison when they are charged or accused of committing a new crime. When you look at the Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility, we had overcrowding for years at MSDF. You had 3 and 4 people to a cell, which was unconscionable. But this is only a holding place for people who have been accused of something else. There's legislation from some of my colleagues across the aisle that say they want people to have mandatory minimums and go straight back to prison when they are accused of doing something else. So that what happened to, innocent until proven guilty? I think that is doing nothing but filling up our prisons and making sure that we have the most incarcerated zip code and being, purveyors of people when you start to over police neighborhoods. So I think that's something that we could address. I also want to look at
remember, 1 minute.
AODA treatments. It's something that we need to do to improve that at the DOC level. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Do you believe that Milwaukee is receiving its adequate level of state shared revenue?
Absolutely not. We put in way more than we get back. It is unfair. The fact that Milwaukee, the city itself, is strapped. Milwaukee, the city and the county are the economic engine of this state, and they are not treated with the economic respect that they deserve. I think that's something that we have to address. It has fallen on deaf ears, but I was happy to see at the county level that there was a unified front put up this last budget cycle where we had people that represent both sides of the aisle coming together to say, no, this has to stop, and Milwaukee needs to get what it deserves. I think that's something that we have to look at and make sure that we fight for. And I think, the Milwaukee caucus does a good job of that, but we have to get, a lot of our individuals from further out of state, they have a disdain for Milwaukee. You say the word Milwaukee and it is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. And I always tell them, you can't live without us, so you may as well pay us.
Thank you. Do you believe that the City of Milwaukee's downtown revitalization initiative contributed to the Northside affordable housing disparity?
It was part of it. It was most definitely a part of it. I think I heard Mr. Owen say before that you talk about who is the downtown being built for. If it's being built for internal tourism, then that's a different perspective than having people that live close by the stadium in the Deer District not being able to participate in any of those things that happen in that area. We have to be able to make sure that Milwaukee is an inclusive place. And I think that goes back to looking at economics and making sure that we can do things. Municipal wages can go up, making sure that we give people the opportunity to have a living wage and be able to have disposable income so that they can utilize the amenities that are downtown.
Thank you. And will you push through the budget or legislative process to have the state provide financing to create Milwaukee jobs to remove lead laterals that are disproportionately poisoning Black and brown children?
Absolutely. I'm most definitely an advocate for removing the lead laterals. I think if Green Bay could have their lead laterals removed and, Madison has taken care of their lead laterals, there is no reason that Milwaukee should not have taken care of the lead laterals, better than they are right now. I think we have to use what is at our disposal. When you look at the fact that we have the Board of Lands, that is run by the state treasurer, she has funding that is available. If the city were to apply for it, I'm almost certain they would probably get it, to have a 0% loan to take care of lead laterals that were put there by government entities. We can't blame people for having lead in their water when this is something that predates most of the people that live in the homes that live in these areas. This was a practice that went out of style when we learned how dangerous lead was. So just passing out filters is most definitely not enough. And expecting people to have the funding to get rid of pipes in their older homes. Milwaukee has a very old housing stock. So we also have to take that into consideration. So making sure that there are appropriations available to get this done, it is a public health necessity.
And Gerald, this is Dan from the NAACP. Are you having issues bringing individuals out of hold for any questions, or are you bringing those individuals out and they're having issues? Just let me know if you can. And thank you, Lakeisha, as well for that response.
And thank you. So far, we haven't had any difficulty bringing the candidates forward, and we agreed that there would not be questions and answers from the audience.
And would there be questions potentially from any other panelists who may be sitting in staging right now?
There will not.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan. Well, my last question to you is, are you a member of the NAACP? And if so, for how long?
Absolutely. I am a member of the NAACP. I've been a member of the NAACP since I was 16 years old and participated in the NAACP AXO competition when I was in high school. So I was happy to make it to nationals way back in 2002 in Houston. So we had a great time.
Well, thank you again for joining us this evening. And I hope that you found this a wonderful opportunity to get your message out to those that are likely voters.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
And good evening, Mr. Cox. Are you able to hear me? Oops.
Gerard, we have Cairo stepping in right now. Is this premature? Should we put?
It's premature.
Okay,
We
Cairo.
have on the docket Mr. Ozell Cox. Is he still with us?
Doesn't look like he's still here. I don't know if we
All
should
right,
go ahead
then
with
we
the
can
program.
move to Mr. Deacon.
Okay, I'll bring him out. Sorry about that, Cairo.
Well, good evening, Mr. Deacon. How are you? Can you hear me? El Cairo. El Cairo, are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me, El Cairo? Dan, I think we have
Now, Cairo, you should be able to talk right now. Unmute yourself. It's a physical button on your microphone. Unmute it. We're waiting for you to talk.
Are you able to hear me now?
Maybe you can type something in. I don't know, or
No, if someone else can give him a call,
okay, then maybe
or if we can, has Ozell returned?
he has not.
How about District 16 candidate Dennis Walton?
Dennis is here. I can put him in.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Walton.
Looks like he's trying to get his okay.
Adjust the screen, okay. Good evening, Mr. Walton. Mr. Walton, can you hear me? You may need to take your mic off mute. Are you able to hear me now? We're still having difficulty having you connect to audio. Okay. No success?
There we go. There we
There
go.
we go.
You got to forgive my technical deficiencies, my brother.
Well, believe me, I've been there.
Got you.
Thank you for joining us this evening. Let me introduce to the rest of the audience Mr. Dennis Walton, who's the District 16, Assembly District 16 candidate. And Mr. Walton, I'd like to give you 2 minutes to explain or share your vision for Assembly District 16.
Well, again, my vision is very simple. I'm a lifelong resident of the city and community here in Milwaukee. And what I want to do is give the community an opportunity to look at the things that I've done and the work that I've done as far as being an advocate and an activist for the 20 plus years that I've been working here in the city of Milwaukee, and allow me to have the opportunity to serve them. And I believe that today we're dealing with so many deficiencies in our community, and that you don't have a lot of champions and warriors who are really pushing real issues across the finish line to help liberate people. And I want to be that voice that helps connect people to that liberation that's needed in our community. So overall, I'm just very sincere about fighting about the injustices that we're dealing with, and hoping that I can be chosen to help leverage resources that improve our community.
Well, thank you. So let's get into the questions. And you've probably heard this being asked of the other candidates, but what additional measures or legislation would you advocate the state take to help Milwaukee reduce its COVID-19 total cases and deaths?
Well, I think the issue of COVID-19 is still something that's very, very new to our community. I mean, we're several months into this thing, and I think that we still haven't figured it out. I think we have to continue to look at the science and the data, and then also look at what's going to be happening post-COVID, because we're dealing with a lot of issues where people are having conditions that could potentially last them for the rest of their lives. So, I think we're going to have a real post-COVID stimulus package, not the $1,200 that, that's being waved around in people's faces and people are being played with, but a real recovery package that's going to address a lot of the issues that are still unknown right now. So I think we still have to collect some data, but I think that as we look at the science and the information that's coming out and the overall health things that people are challenged with, we'll be able to make better decisions as we move forward.
Thank you. How do you think the state can help reduce the cost of healthcare to make it more affordable for low-income Milwaukeeans?
Well, again, I think, as we talk about this issue of healthcare, this argument has been going on for a very long time, and I think that there are relevant arguments on both sides of the aisle on how we accomplish this. So the information on how to get it done is there. What the challenge is how do we come to a compromise? How do we come to an understanding that we cannot have partisan politics play a role in how we affect change when we talk about what people need to improve themselves. So I think that we need to look at all of the information that's been presented, all of the plans that have been laid out. And I think the greatest challenge right now is to get past the bickering on both sides of the aisle and say, where do we come to a compromise to make a decision that's best for our community?
Thank you. Would you support having a nonpartisan, independent redistricting commission to draft and implement electoral district maps?
Yeah, I think it's critical. I think it's critical that we have a nonpartisan party that facilitates that. Too many times when we have parties that are in power, they abuse their power. And one thing we have to realize is that you can't have one side without the other. We cannot continue to just be one-sided and bipartisan about issues. We have to look at the interest of all people when we talk about the constituents in the 16th district and in the state of Wisconsin, whether they're Republican or Democrat, and we have to make decisions that are best for the people. And I think we have to get away from the party politics, but really get into making sure we're representing what's best for the constituents in the 16th district and the state of Wisconsin.
What can be done to improve Wisconsin's criminal justice institutional system, the cradle to jail pipeline?
Again, I've done a lot of work around this issue. A lot of people are talking about 53206, which is the film that I was able to produce that has been kind of the catalyst for criminal justice reform. But we have to look at a lot of different things when we talk about criminal justice reform. And again, there are so many wonderful proposals and intelligent proposals that are on the table. And we have to look at these things intelligently and say, what makes sense? There's no, we cannot deny the fact that the criminal justice system has disproportionately affected certain groups of people, Black people, brown people in particular, and that there's a systemic racism that's within that institution. So when we look at issues like truth in sentencing, we have to address that. When we look at mandatory minimums, and we know how that affects our community, we have to tackle that. When we look at the implicit biases, that take place in the court system, and when people are going, within the judicial system, we have to acknowledge that these things are real. And then when you look at parole and probation and how people are affected, a lot of these systems are outdated today. They are just simply outdated. And we have to look at passing fresh and renewed laws and legislation that affect change and are relevant for the issues that we're dealing with today. And then we also have to look at the issue of expungement and pardons. There's no way that we should allow people to be walking around with these stigmas of having felonies or not being able to free themselves, but we want them to become productive citizens in society. So re-entry is a really important thing that we have to address, but we also have to address how we work with the brothers and sisters on the inside before they come out, and be real about how we give them self-sustaining measures to empower themselves.
Thank you. Do you believe that there's a shortage of affordable housing in Milwaukee?
Oh, yeah, there's definitely a shortage. But again, not only is there a shortage of affordable housing, but you can't even get to a person being able to afford a house if you don't address the issue of poverty, and employment, and making sure that people have substantial income so that they can sustain themselves. And especially as we move into post-COVID, our economy has been devastated. So how do we make sure that people have the proper resources to sustain themselves, to live a basic quality of life so that they can afford housing? So I think that when we talk about affordable housing, we have to look at that as a crisis. But the other crisis is that people are not even able to afford to live anywhere because of the income indifferences, or because of the employment indifferences that we have, and because of the level of poverty. So I think you have to have balance in that conversation when we look at how we accomplish that successfully.
Do you believe that Milwaukee is receiving its adequate level of state shared revenue?
Of course not. When you look at the infrastructure in the city of Milwaukee, when you look at the deficits that exist, when you look at the high level of dysfunction that's happening in the inner city of Milwaukee, we are not getting our fair share. And when you look at Milwaukee being the largest tax base or the largest income generator in the state, there's no way that we should be deficient in all the areas that we are right now.
So, kind of doubling back to the housing issue, do you think that the city of Milwaukee's downtown revitalization initiative contributed to the Northside affordable housing disparity?
Well, I can say this. If we can put $2 billion into developing Pfizer Forum, which is a part of the 16th district, if we can give $430 million to the downtown convention center for expansion, if we can have a first-class institution, a world-class institution like Marquette in the 16th district, but 5 minutes away, you have young men being found dead in garbage cans. You have people speeding down the street and running into buildings and killing people. You have mental health and health disparities that exist at the highest level in the nation. I think we can pretty much look at the imbalance right there. And if we can mirror the successes of the downtown area, which is the eastern side of the district, which is the wealthiest district, which is the wealthiest area within the state of Wisconsin, downtown Milwaukee, and we can look at the personality and the strengths of the eastern side, and we can couple those strengths with the west side, mirror those strengths with the west side. I think we can bring balance to that situation. But there's no way we should have the highest rate of incarceration, the highest rate of health disparities, as well as the wealthiest downtown area in the same district. So I think that if we look at the strengths of the district and use and apply those to where we have weaknesses at, we can bring the district into balance to where we can be successful overall.
Thank you. Will you push through the budget or legislative process to have the state provide financing to create Milwaukee jobs to remove lead laterals that are disproportionately poisoning Black and brown children?
Well, I think the science is there. I think the data is there. I think when you look at the conditions of the community and what happens from a community that has been poisoned by lead, you see all of those negative circumstances that exist, especially on the north side of Milwaukee. And so I think it has to be a priority. Now, am I going to, can I demand that this happens? You know, we have to be practical that, you know, any legislator is just one person. And the skill of being a legislator means that you have to work properly with others. And I think that we're forgetting that. So I would do my very best to bring forth what's intelligent and cultivate the necessary relationships based upon the data that we have and build coalition around us moving forward collectively to get these things done, because that's the only way it's going to happen.
And finally, are you a member of the NAACP? And if so, for how long?
I am not.
Do you plan to join?
It's possible. It's possible. You know, I haven't seen a lot coming from the NAACP lately. And, you know, me and Fred have worked together in the past. I'm very much interested in anything that's happening in the community that's improving. But I think a lot of our institutions right now are kind of, you know, they're fending and they're fighting for themselves, and they're going through, you know, just that whole renewing of self. So I would love to learn more about what's happening with the NAACP today. And if it's something that's continuing to improve our community, I would definitely, you know, welcome being a part of it.
Well, thank you again for joining us this evening.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me.
We have Ozell Cox joining us.
Okay, can you see me, Gerard?
I cannot. I think you may have to adjust your screen.
Oh,
I can see a little more of you, and that's great.
wait a minute, Gerard. Okay, I'm gonna come. You know, I should not be on this split screen up here, I don't believe. I don't know.
Well,
But with all the problems we have, we better go. I think we probably should move forward.
there we go. That's better.
Okay, and if I move back, maybe I can be seen. Is
That's
that okay,
perfect.
Gerard?
That's
Okay.
perfect.
All right, let's continue on. Great
All
seeing you.
right. Great to see you too. Adjusted screen and all.
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to welcome you, Mr. Cox, candidate for Assembly District number 12.
Yes.
And I'd like to give you an opportunity to share with us your vision for your candidacy.
Well, Gerard, thank you for having me, and I thank all the people that might be looking into this particular broadcast. My reason for running is this: I'm a longtime resident, Gerard, of Milwaukee. I grew up here in Milwaukee during a time when there was a middle class in Milwaukee, and by that I mean that there were jobs and people were able to sustain their family. There were living wage jobs. It seems in the last 2 to 3 decades that has all dissipated. And I attribute that to poor leadership in the city and for the city not having a vision. And one of the primary things I'm concerned with, or some of the primary things I'm concerned with, is that we've had all our goods and services essentially leave the city. We have a trouble attracting investors in the city. We can't get young families to settle here because of school systems, crime, and other conditions that are not favorable to attracting people. I also, one thing that really concerns me too is when I grew up here from being African American in the 53206 zip code, all the stores and gas stations and all that were owned by African Americans. Now we essentially see none of that. So that's very, very concerning. I'm running because we need to create a middle class. And I'm also running because we have to put a stop to these failed policies, and we have to say no. And we deserve a great city, and that's what I want to deliver to the people.
Thank you. Well, let's launch into these questions. In the first, what additional measures or legislation would you advocate the state to take to help Milwaukee reduce its COVID-19 total cases and deaths?
Well, you know, I think a lot of it is due to a lot of conditions that we have, especially in the African American community. We have a lot of situations of poverty, a lot of things that are attributed to nutrition, people living kind of on top of each other. I think a lot of our problems, and you know, you'll see me refer back to this several times during this presentation, is due to our economic conditions here. I think if we can start to do that, we start getting good food into the city and those kind of things, educating people on exercise so their resistance can be up, and you know, teaching them about vitamins and supplements and those sort of things. I think we can lessen some of the burden of COVID-19.
Thank you. How can the state help reduce the cost of healthcare to make it more affordable for low-income Milwaukeeans?
Well, you know, I think one of the things we can do, and I think it's being done somewhat on the federal level, I think we have to reduce the cost of prescription drugs. I think we really have to do that. And I think we have to look at how hospitals are structured, how we deliver our healthcare services here. And I think we're in a place now where we need a real major revision of our healthcare system. It's not functional. We have insurance companies, people's deductibles are way too high. All these things are really problematic for people in the city. They can't afford the healthcare, especially during this COVID crisis that we're having.
Would you support having a nonpartisan, independent redistricting commission to draft and implement electoral district maps?
No, I would not. And the reason being, you know, as the law currently stands and as the state constitution affords here, the party that's in majority draws up the lines. Now, well, of course, the party that's not in majority at that time is going to have a problem with that. But there's a couple things that we have to take issue with here, we have to be concerned about. Number one, it may come a time where the other party's in majority and they won't want to withdraw. They won't want to have this commission. Now, secondly, and by the way, when a party is in control, that's the will of the people. These people are duly appointed and duly elected officials. So we have to say that's the will of the people. Now, the other thing is this. They talk about a commission, and I have a lot of concerns about that. Number one, who's on this commission? What qualifies them to be on this commission? And how do we know that they won't become corrupted? That will be quite a bit of power to put in the hands of citizens, and it would subject them. We'd have to have tremendous controls because it subjects those people to corruption and influence. So no, I would not. Now I'm willing to look at other means of having a more fair distribution of the lines, but not by having a commission elected by Governor Evers. And thirdly, it's not going to pass the legislature anyway.
So what can be done to improve Wisconsin's criminal justice institutional system, the cradle to jail pipeline?
Well, see, here again, you're going to hear, and as I told you, you're going to hear me refer back to economics a lot. As a practical matter, the more people that we get to work, and this is just a very practical thing, it means that they have less exposure to the criminal justice system. If I'm working eight hours a day, most people go home and that's it. Now, also, when you have people working and fully engaged in this system, they have a tendency to follow certain behaviors, such as purchasing assets and homes and doing these things. So they become engaged in a different way, and they have less interactions with police. Now, as secondly, as police reform goes, I am what you call a rule of law person. And by that, I mean, if a person breaks the law, and I have a law enforcement background and I have a criminal justice major from Marquette. If people break the law, then they ought to be held accountable. Now, from working in law enforcement, I know this, that most law enforcement officers do their job and they do it without going outside the boundaries. But for those that do go outside the boundaries, they certainly should be held accountable. And one of the cases that we all saw was the case of Floyd, where the officer intentionally choked out the individual. He has to be held accountable. Now, what are some other things we can do? Now, we can create incentives within the police department for people for officers to have good relations with the community. And that can be a part of their evaluations and part of their upward mobility in the office. Secondly, we can, I believe in cameras because I think it protects both the officer and the citizenry. Now, thirdly, I think what we have to do, and I haven't heard a lot of talk about this, we have existing laws on the books that have to be enforced. And specifically, I'm talking about laws that deal with reasonable force and when you're authorized to use deadly force. So these are all things that we should look at. But I think one of the big, and the other thing too, that I think is important is
you're bumping up on your time limit on the question.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, let's
finish your thought.
Yeah, I'm just saying we can get more people from the community to join the force. Because I think relation and being able to relate is a big part of the problem sometimes we have in criminal justice reform.
Thank you. Do you believe that there's a shortage of affordable housing in Milwaukee?
I think it is. And again, it's directly related to, that's why it's so important for us to increase the social status and the economic status of people in this city, because a lot of that is due to that. We get people working in that kind of thing, we can alleviate a lot of those problems. It's way better than the government program. We got to get people in the city, and that's the bottom line. And it goes into a lot of different areas, from healthcare to housing to everything. We have to get people back working again.
Do you believe that Milwaukee is receiving its adequate level of state shared revenue?
I'm biased on this. I have to have to be honest with you. I say no. We're the largest city in the in the state, but we're one of the most impoverished places in the state. We have a greater demand in this state, in the city. So I don't think we are. Also, I look at this. We're the 31st or 32nd largest city in the United States, and it's rated. And I'm speaking specifically to our African American audience. It's rated as the worst place to live. This is what my candidacy is all about. We can no longer accept that, and we have to hold our leaders accountable. And I'll tell you this too. There's been a lot of talk about Republicans, Black Republicans running, and there's been some notions that's been floated that I've heard pretty much on radio from other in different places that we would be marginalized if we got up in Madison. But I want to debunk that. We have a great chance of succeeding in Madison. We have a great chance because we're among the Republican majority. And not only that, I spoke to a lot of Republicans. They're very, very open to expanding the base in the Milwaukee, and they're very concerned about this city. But what I'd like to say is a last comment. These people that are questioning our effectiveness, how in the world do they think they're going to go up to Madison in the opposition party and they're in constant opposition with Republicans and be successful? I just think I had to say that because they've been floating that notion quite a bit on the radio.
Well, let me get us back on track with some of the questions that we have prepared for you to answer.
Yes.
Do you believe the City of Milwaukee's downtown revitalization initiative contributed to the Northside's affordable housing disparity?
Yeah, that's one of my biggest objections to how things have gone in the last couple of decades. There's been a lot of resources poured into the downtown area and to the east side, and nothing on our side of town. That's one of the things I would do if I was in the assembly is demand our fair share. But here's my problem also. Even the money that they poured into the downtown area, I don't think is very effective. Putting lofts above a vacant shopping center. It's all tentative based on the Bucks' success. We have a young man by the name of Giannis Antetokounmpo that may or may not stay here. I think that would adversely affect what they're doing downtown if he was to leave. So the plans are very tentative at best.
And you've spoken on this, but will you push through the budget or legislative process to have the state provide financing to create Milwaukee jobs, to remove lead laterals that are disproportionately poisoning Black and brown children?
I'll address the first part of your question. That's absolutely what I would do, and that's one of the main things that I'm putting out as part of my campaign promises. I'll give you an example. Rhode Island, I think we can do this even during the COVID environment also. Rhode Island passed a bill that they partnered with 63 businesses, the government. They proposed the bill. And what these 63 businesses decided and agreed to was that they would hire these people in these apprenticeship programs. And so they went through these apprenticeship programs and they don't have to wait to get hired somewhere. They were hired immediately. I think we can duplicate those kind of things. And I think we can even thrive during the COVID environment. I think we can start to build now. As a matter of fact, I think this is a great time or opportunity. Now, as it relates to the lead pipes, of course, we're concerned about the health of our people in the city and the children especially. I'd be willing to look at those things in the budget, but of course, I'd want to know that Milwaukee has done their share in resolving this issue. But I'd be willing to look at that in our budget.
Well, thank you. And finally, are you a member of the NAACP? And if so,
yes.
For how long?
Well, I am not. But, I would consider becoming a part of it. I've been a part of so many things, Gerard, that I've done in my life that's not one of the things I've gotten around to. But I certainly respect what they've done over the years and have a tremendous respect for them and would look at joining at some point in the future.
Well, we appreciate your joining us this evening. and we wish your candidacy success.
Well, thank you so much, Gerard.
Abby, if you can hear me, please take your mic off. There we go. I'd like to welcome this evening Assembly District 17 candidate, Abby Eisenbach. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great this evening. Please give us your 2-minute articulation of why you are a candidate for the Assembly District number 17.
I would just first like to thank the NAACP for inviting me. I consider it an honor to be here. The reason I'm running because I am a lifelong Milwaukee boy. I was born in District 17, lived here my whole life, and I'm now raising my 6 beautiful children here. I felt that it's time that I stood up and did more for my city, for my neighborhood, for my district, and brought the fire I have in me to Madison to fight for the people of our city, to give us a quality education, to give them affordable health care, to bring back mental health awareness back to the forefront. Because there are children in our city, as well as adults, who are going through a lot and just don't have people to talk to, which leads to them bottling up and unfortunately expressing it in other ways that are not necessarily good ways. Also want to just bring more opportunity to the inner city. I know we'll get that question later, but we need to invest more in our inner city and help the children and the parents find that fire, find that spark inside of them, find that little bit of meaning to know that someone cares about you, which will lead them to care about themselves, which will lead them to grow, to ignite that little spark into that flame of passion and desire and wanting to do more for not only their families, but again, for their community and for their city. And I want to bring unity back into our community.
Well, thank you very much. So we'll launch into the questions. The first being, what additional measures or legislation would you advocate the state take to help Milwaukee reduce its COVID-19 total cases and deaths?
Well, following the past candidates, you're putting me in a tight spot because they all gave exceptional answers. But being that COVID-19 is relatively new, it's only a few months old, we do not know enough about it. We have to learn more. We have to rely on science, rely on our doctors, and figure out ways to curb it, because we just don't have enough information. So we need to have the doctors step up and actually come up with facts instead of changing every day that this works, this doesn't. And then the next day, this doesn't work, this does. So we have to get facts, and then we could move forward and implement what actually works.
Thank you. How can the state help reduce the cost of healthcare to make it more affordable for low-income Milwaukeeans?
That was a very good question as well. We have to shift how we think of medicine, how medical care. there are, in my area, I live in District 17, there's one hospital and not a lot of doctors' offices here, not a lot of clinics. So we need to expand that, make more walk-in clinics, and just find alternative ways to lower the cost. We have to get insurances to lower their rates. As Mr. Cox said, on the federal level, we have to figure out how to lower medications because some of these medications are out of control. As well as going to the hospital. In my area, going to the hospital for something you could go to a doctor for. Instead of going to the ER, you go to your doctor, which would help lower costs, help people, educate them how to find a regular doctor instead of going to the ER for all their medical needs. So again, I'm going back to education, which is one thing I am very passionate about.
So would you support having a nonpartisan, independent redistricting commission to draft and implement electoral district maps?
Going back onto what everyone else said, but putting my own spin on it, I'm willing to be open to discuss it, to have a real open, honest discussion with anybody about that. But again, as Mr. Cox said, whoever's in power gets to decide, and whoever's not in power will always be upset about that. So people voted us in, obviously want us to be in power. So they, as Mr. Cox said, this is the will of the people. And I plan on working for the people. So if they vote me in, I will be working for them.
What can be done to improve Wisconsin's criminal justice institutional system, the cradle to jail pipeline?
Well, first we have to go through all the antiquated laws and the punishments of those laws, because I was at a meeting today and there are laws out there to specifically, unfortunately, to lock up Black and brown people. And we have to go through all these laws and update them and bring them to 2020 and show that not only has the world changed, but we've changed as well. Another thing, as Mr. Cox said, education. We have to start investing in our education in our cities to help the kids be able to grow up and not have to be part of the judicial system. Give them meaning, give them purpose, after school programs, give them apprenticeship opportunities, so they don't even have to worry about being from cradle to prison. Another thing we have to do is when there are people in prison, we have to help them acclimate back to society, whether it's training for jobs, apprenticeship jobs in prison, or education. Some people don't even have a high school education, so help them get GEDs. There's helping people acclimate back into society, so when they get out, they don't go right back in.
Thank you. Do you believe that Milwaukee is receiving its adequate level of state shared revenue?
Yes and no. We are, but we also have to come up with ways to make our own revenue. We have to invest again in our city so that we will have more people working, we'll have more people spending money, we'll have more city taxes that we could rely on instead of always running back to Madison and saying, give us more money, give us more money. On the other hand, we haven't really had the representation in Madison that we needed to get us that funding. Because again, they've been across the aisle instead of at the table. And with the proper representation, we could get the proper funding that we need. But we also have to make sure that the city of Milwaukee spends it on what we need in the city of Milwaukee.
Along those lines, do you believe that the city of Milwaukee's downtown revitalization initiative contributed to the Northside affordable housing disparity?
Yes. Yes. When you're so invested in pushing money for downtown and building up downtown, putting hotels in downtown, putting in huge buildings and investing in the Pfizer Forum and that whole area downtown by the lake, I understand that's where all our money comes from. But when no one wants to come to Milwaukee because of our crime rate, because of murders happening, with the reckless driving, how much do you expect to get from downtown when no one's there? So we got to focus on the inner city. We got to revitalize that now to make Milwaukee shine, to make downtown relevant. And that will help, again, going back to the previous question, that will help Milwaukee raise funds for Milwaukee and become self-sufficient.
Thank you. Will you push through the budget or legislative process to have the state provide financing to create Milwaukee jobs to remove lead laterals that are disproportionately poisoning Black and brown children?
Being a father of 6, the health of children is very important to me. So if there was a guarantee that the people in Milwaukee, the word is losing my mind, is slipping my mind right now. The leaders in Milwaukee, the politicians of Milwaukee will spend it for that. I would back it 100%. But if they're going to figure something else out to spend it on, I don't want the money to go to waste. We do need to take care of our children because they're our future. As well as investing in businesses, I believe that was the first part of the question. I am 100% for that. When we give people a business, it gives them a purpose, gives them a meaning to wake up. And then they hire people, which also gives them a purpose and a meaning and a reason to be a productive part of society, instead of these crazy drivers we have or these murders that are happening, unfortunately, way too much. So I am very big into investing in Milwaukee, in the inner city.
And my final and my favorite question is, are you a member of the NAACP? And if so, for how long?
I am not, which I am sure everyone is shocked, but I do look forward to this relationship that I hope we now have going forward and working together with you and helping the Black and brown community in Milwaukee, helping invest not only in them, but in our city, helping them grow, helping them find that spark and blowing it into that beautiful flame of life and excitement to get up every morning and go to work and just be a part of productive society.
Well, Mr. Eisenbach, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. We wish your candidacy good luck.
Thank you very much for having me. It was truly an honor and a pleasure. Thank you. God bless.
God bless. This evening. Good evening. Can you hear me, Miss Bryant? I can hear you.
Yes, hang on one sec. Let me open up my screen.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Well, I want to
Hello.
welcome you.
Thank you.
And to our audience, I'd like to introduce you to Senate District Number 6 candidate, Ms. Michelle Bryant. So, Ms. Bryant, please share with us your vision for the Senate District that you are a candidate for, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Gerard. Thank you to the NAACP and your 3 partnering organizations, the Republican Party of Wisconsin, the Socialist Party, and the Libertarian Party for hosting this debate or this discussion tonight. As Gerard said, my name is Michelle Bryant. I am a write-in candidate for the 6th Senate District, and I got into this race for 3 very specific reasons that also play into my vision for the district. The 3 things that propelled my decision to run: our response to COVID-19, the Strauss deal that was being considered for my neighborhood, which was about 5 or 6 blocks from my home, and also the fact that we had 5 polling locations in the spring primary election, and very little was done to protect voters in that process. The vision for the district is that we have a responsive district to the needs of the constituents, that it takes into account the needs of our individual communities and respects the residents of the district. I think that we need a much more proactive and assertive leadership style in the district, and those were the things that propelled me to run.
Thank you. So we can begin with our litany of questions.
Okay.
What additional measures or legislation would you advocate the state take to help Milwaukee reduce its COVID-19 total cases and deaths?
First of all, let me say that it is frustrating that our legislature, the Republican-controlled legislature, has done so little in relationship to bills, legislation, and or work during this period. It has been 6 months since the legislature has met and done anything decisive. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get to work. We are at the bottom of the list when you compare Wisconsin to neighboring states, Minnesota. There are states that have passed 50 and 70 bills to be able to help on every aspect of COVID-19, from education to hospital funding to healthcare to shoring up the economy to supporting small business. So the first thing that I would say is that we need to actually get to work. We need people that don't think that this is just going to go away. We leave our chances to the wind, and that we actually come in as a legislative body and do some work.
All right, thank you. How can the state help to reduce the cost of healthcare to make it more affordable for low-income Milwaukeeans?
First of all, we need to deal with Medicaid expansion. The idea that we have left the amount of money that we have on the table, money that Wisconsin taxpayers rightfully have coming to them, it is, ridiculous. We need to fight for the retention of the ACA. When we have other states that are joining in on briefs with the federal government to dismantle the Affordable Care Act, which potentially that conversation is going to be happening on November 10th. We need to do more to make sure that the Affordable Care Act is protected. We need to also think about the fact that Wisconsin families on average spend roughly 11 to 12% of their income on premiums and deductibles. We've got to be able to do something to lower the cost of that. That roughly is about $6,400 a year that families are spending. The other thing that we need to do is be more forceful in our request for help from the feds. There has been measures taken to deal with prescription drug costs, but we also know that generic drugs need to be brought to the market sooner. The other thing that we have to think about, whether as a state or as a nation, and COVID-19 has made that extremely clear. Right now, most Americans' insurance, if they are a working age and without a disability, it is tied to employment. Well, in the midst of COVID-19 and the loss of, at one time, 40 million jobs in this nation, and people's healthcare was tied to their employment, what ultimately ends up happening? It either falls to the taxpayers or people go without. So we have to also be willing to be able to rethink how we provide healthcare in this state as well.
Thank you. Would you support having a nonpartisan, independent redistricting commission to draft and implement electoral district maps?
Absolutely. We have to end the current practice of legislators picking their constituents. It has been said that, the people pick the legislators and therefore the legislators should draw the district lines. Well, that's not exactly the way this has worked out, because we have seen legislators make power grabs, and it's happened on both sides of the aisle, to be fair. But just because we elected you, we didn't elect you to decide to hoard all the power for yourself and draw neighborhoods in a manner in which it reduced the impact of voters' wishes in future elections. And that's what we've seen. More Democrats showed up at the polls and voted in the 2018-2016 elections, but Republicans were able to grab more power because of the way they had gerrymandered districts. So the idea that this, and also, and I happen to be listening, it was frustrating to hear that there was a candidate who thought that citizens couldn't be trusted, that they would be corrupted in terms of figuring out legislative districts. The last thing I'll say about that, folks have said this is hard, and what are the qualifications of people that are doing this? I actually led a redistricting project for Wisconsin Voices, in which we brought in the software that is used around the country to be able to help citizens understand how to draw legislative maps. It's not that difficult. These are tools that are available to states that can be done in a nonpartisan way and in a fair and unbiased way. So this idea that we can't trust our citizens to draw impartial and fair lines, that was extremely disheartening. It can be done fairly, and it needs to be done without legislators putting their hands and tipping the scale in their favor.
What can be done to improve Wisconsin's criminal justice institutional system, the cradle to jail pipeline?
I think that there has to be a complete revisioning of the way we see criminal justice. We need to look at not only the system itself, but who the participants are. We need to look at diversity and inclusion efforts around who are judges, who are police officers, who are district attorneys. All those things make a difference in the way the system is administered, because a system is only as good as the people that you have operating it and the diversity that's reflected in those systems. In addition to that, many of the things that have been cited by other candidates this evening, whether we talk about making sure that the levers of these systems work, community policing, pattern and practice reviews by the Department of Justice, when we talk about parole and probation and the fact that we had 8 years of a Republican governor who refused to do his constitutional duty to consider those things, people being held under old law versus new law. When we talk about how the system is designed poorly in terms of recidivism, and that folks aren't being given the tools that they need to be successful, returning the right to vote to people once they have left the prison system. In fact, letting people vote even while you are incarcerated, because you are still being impacted by decisions that are being made. So I think that there has to be a top to bottom review, not only of the laws, the way they are applied, but also to make sure that they are that the systems are fair in terms of representation, that juries are fair. We talk about jury of our peers. I've never been called for jury duty a single day in my life, and I've been a voter since I was 18 years old. How is that possible, that I've never in my entire life been called for jury duty? So we just need to make sure that we do a review of the system from top to bottom.
Thank you. Do you believe that Milwaukee is receiving its adequate level of state shared revenues?
No, I join many of the folks that have spoke before me. Shared revenue, this system was started in 1911. Over the years, we have watched counties and municipalities receive roughly about 90% of the dollars that they send to the state, dwindle to 70% to 60%, and teeter-tottering at 50%. And so these systems are unsustainable, particularly when the state chooses to tie the hands of local municipalities and how they raise money. The other thing that we have to do is shore up other communities around the state to be able to better support their districts. when we look at the fact that some areas around the state, they don't have industries, they don't have a lot of jobs that's being generated, we don't get to turn our back on people. But we do have to figure out a way that if I'm sending $1 to Madison and I'm only getting back 50 to 60 cents on my dollar, that's a problem. So yeah, I certainly agree that we need to fix and find a better funding formula, because we've made the funding formula so complex that it now just feels like a money grab, if I can just be candid, when it comes to Milwaukee.
And do you believe there's a shortage of affordable housing in Milwaukee?
There is a shortage of affordable housing. Many people had an opportunity to read Matthew Desmond's book, Evicted, in which he talked about the fact that $300 was the average amount of money that a Milwaukee area resident needed to be able to make the rent and comfortably be able to pay other bills. But as some other folks have identified, we do need, thank you, you held that up. We do need wages to keep pace with inflation. The fact that we still have legal situations for tipped wages in which a person can still make $2.35 if they work as in the hospitality industry, IHOP, Denny's, and taxpayers are subsidizing that by way of tips. That how can anybody go to an 8-hour workday and make $2.35 an hour? When we saw the additional $600 added for the unemployment benefits through the federal government, if you compile or added that on top of Wisconsin's, I think roughly $370, it put people pretty much in line with where they should be if they were getting $15 an hour. So there's a dual conversation that has to happen. Affordable housing, but you also need wages to keep rate with inflation so that people can make enough money to be able to afford housing.
So along those lines, do you believe that the city of Milwaukee's downtown revitalization initiative contributed to the Northside affordable housing disparity?
I think that we have to be honest about housing disparities across the board in the city of Milwaukee and in some cases around the state. You have a number of things like redlining, segregation, housing discrimination that have played into what our city looks like in terms of housing. It's not a secret that many people are frustrated that our downtown area continues to get resources and help that's needed in neighboring communities continues to get pushed off, moved off to a different day. You know, I think some folks have said we can find money to do what we want to do. So we know that housing has not been a priority. And we know that there's so much more that can be done, but it's not simply about downtown revitalization. You also have to look at the storied history of Milwaukee and Wisconsin in relationship to housing and how African Americans have consistently been pushed out of decent quality housing.
So as senator, will you push through the budget or legislative process to have the state provide financing to create Milwaukee jobs to remove lead laterals that are disproportionately poisoning Black and brown children?
So I think that there has to be a multifaceted approach to dealing with the lead lateral situation. Of course, the state should have a role in that, since these lead pipes were actually mandated by law that they be used in the state of Wisconsin. The idea that we would push that responsibility solely to homeowners, as some have suggested, is unacceptable to me. We have seen other cities around the state, Madison, deal with their lead lateral problem. They have dealt with theirs more than 16 years ago. I think that we have to do a combination of things. We have to make it a priority in Milwaukee. You know, we have to be in a position where we figure out how to help ourselves in addition to what the state should be doing. And because we have seen that there's been a reluctance, not just in Milwaukee, but we know that Milwaukee had roughly 70,000 homes and housing stock and buildings that were impacted by lead laterals. But that situation is going on around the state. And whether it's lead laterals or wells that have corrupted wells systems, there are other areas of the state that are also going through these challenges in terms of getting clean, healthy water into their houses. So we have to be willing to concede that there has to be a multifaceted approach, multi-pronged approach. Everybody has to do their share. But the state certainly should be willing to step up. In terms of creating jobs to get that done, that works as well. But we have got to be able to figure out, if no one comes to save us, and the state has been dragging their feet under the Republican-controlled legislature to help states, cities, and municipalities get this done, how do we help ourselves in the meantime? Tom Barrett, I think, put $20 million in his most recent budget to deal with lead laterals, but that, also is money going to the health department and other things. I'm saying that in 16 years under this current administration in the city, I've not seen the dedicated dollars and resources that we have needed to seriously deal with the problem. I think we've only taken care of roughly 7,500 lead laterals in 16 years, if I got my math right. If that's the case, that's ridiculous to me.
Well, finally, my last question to you and to all of the candidates is, are you a member of the NAACP? And if so, for how long?
I am a card-carrying member of the NAACP. I actually started the college chapter of the NAACP at Wichita State University when I was a student there, and I have been a member of the NAACP off and on. And I'll be honest, I usually remember to make sure my membership is updated when I buy my annual ticket to the Freedom Fund dinner, because it includes your membership when you do that. So as long as I know I'm going to the Freedom Fund dinner, I know that my membership stays current. But I actually started the NAACP chapter when I was in college.
And as a note, the Freedom Fund dinner this weekend, will be virtually.
Yes.
Or will
and
be
I do
virtual.
have my ticket. I do have my ticket.
Here we go.
That's very correct.
Thank you for, I'm sorry.
No, sorry, Gerard. Thank you for being a card holding member of the NAACP. We respect you for doing everything you can. That's great that you showed that. We hope everyone else can become a member as well. Thank you.
I think I heard most who aren't pledged to be one. Well, thank you again, Ms. Bryant, for being a part of this discussion this evening, and we wish your candidacy well as also.
Thank you very much.
And now, good evening. I'd like to welcome Mr. Elkairo Deacon, who's a candidate for Senate District number 6. Welcome, Mr. Deacon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
We had a few hiccups early on, but I think we've gotten those problems resolved, and we're glad to have you join us this evening. I'd like to give you an opportunity to share with us your vision for your candidacy and for Senate District number 6.
All right, so my name is Elkairo Deacon. I'm running for State Senate District 6. I've been doing reentry work in various capacities for the last 10 years. My vision for District 6 is upward mobility. I got my vision out of experience of serving the community, primarily the community that's been incarcerated. I've seen some of the gaps. I want to bring a family and consumer sciences initiative to schools, and I think that would really chop things away at the root. It would teach people financial literacy, job readiness, credit, difference between owning and renting a home. A lot of the things that the people that I've served that are incarcerated that they did not receive. So that's my approach. I want upward mobility for the district. I want everyone to be thriving instead of surviving. And if you check my website, deaconforsenate.com, you'll see all of my solutions. I can't talk about them in this time, so I want to be respectful of the time that you allotted me.
Well, thank you for that. And we have a number of questions that we'd like your responses to. And I'll begin with, what additional measures or legislation would you advocate the state take to help Milwaukee reduce its COVID-19 total cases and deaths?
Well, with COVID-19, as you've heard Mr. Ozell Cox say, I'm in agreement that we're not in shape in this community. And so when COVID hits people in this community, it takes them out a lot easier. I think we need to advocate to provide more resources for education on COVID-19 and more education on just staying healthy. And we could do that through churches, through social workers, through people that the community know and trust and would listen to. I believe that's what we need to do to really begin to flatten the curve of COVID-19 in the community.
Thank you. Would you support, how can the state help to reduce the cost of healthcare to make it more affordable for low-income Milwaukeeans?
I think for me, I think we have to shift our focus to preventative medicine or proactive healthcare. I do think we need to have lower medications. And I think, again, we need to lower the cost of healthcare by helping people not need it. So I would advocate for programs like more co-ops, more creative solutions like allowing people to purchase land, grow food and juice it to stay healthy so that it's not needed for it, so that the system's not needed. So I try to do practical approaches because expanding it right now is not really popular. So I try to work what can be worked. And so I believe that we need to push more initiatives for preventative medicine, educating people on how to stay healthy, and just being proactive.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Would you support having a nonpartisan, independent redistricting commission to draft and implement electoral district maps?
Absolutely. This is America, and we need to protect democracy. There's no room for anything of that nature. So I would support that. I think we need to, both parties, we really need to just go out and educate the community about what it means to be Republican, what it means to be Democrat, and give history, because there's a lot of confusion about that, even to this day. And I think once we do that, people won't really resort to gerrymandering and things of that nature that's frowned upon. So yes, I do think we need to do it the right way.
What can be done to improve Wisconsin's criminal justice institutional system, the cradle to jail pipeline?
So I consider myself very versed in this. So again, like I said, we need to do a family and consumer sciences 2.0 initiative in schools. People are leaving schools, but they know Shakespeare, but they don't know what's needed for life. Just people that have graduated college, they don't know the difference between owning and renting a home. Now I'm talking from experience. I've helped thousands of people in a American Job Center, one of the first of its kind in the Milwaukee County House of Corrections. It's now called the Empowerment Center. And what I found as I collected, because people have to do assessments, various assessments I've had to run participants through, thousands of people. They don't, a lot of them didn't finish school. And the schooling that they have, it's not what they know is not getting them through life. A lot of them want to start businesses, but they don't know how. And the school system is really just doing a what's the phrase? One shape fits all. It's doing cookie cutter schooling. So I want to fix that. I also, when we need to shapen up our reentry efforts. Currently, I want to go in and change the law that says that you cannot do, you can only do Huber if you have a felony. So if you have a felony, you can't do Huber, only if you have a misdemeanor. If we just tweak that thing right there and give the jails the ability to make the choice of who's going to go out and do Huber or not, they'll be able to go out and start working, saving money, so that when they come out, they don't have to resort to selling drugs to go back in. Another tweak I'd like to do is I'd like to enable the jails and the prisons to be able to do FSET programming. That's the Food Share Employment and Training Program while participants are incarcerated. We tried to do it while I would work in the jails, but it was not allowable. So a quick tweak in the law would allow that. They'd be trained and they'd be ready to go and start to get a high-paying job once they're released. So it takes a multifaceted approach to stop the cradle to prison pipeline. And I'm well versed in that. I have experience with that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that Milwaukee is receiving its adequate level of state shared revenues?
Well, no, I don't think so. And I think there might be some things at play, when it comes to that. Maybe there's just disagreement on how Milwaukee spends its money. I think we need to really start looking at ways to generate revenue here in Milwaukee. When I worked in bridging the gap between the supply and demand sides of Milwaukee's economy, I learned that the jobs would say there aren't any workers, and the employers would say there aren't any jobs. So I have solutions. If you look at my website, deaconforsenate.com, to get the economy moving that will generate more revenue. I also think we need to create more initiatives that would have individuals that work here, live here. There's a tremendous amount of people that work here, but they don't live here. If they live here, then they're spending money, generating more revenue. So things of that nature. Our police, they don't have to live here. If we had them live here, they'd be spending more money here. That would generate revenue. So I think we need to really tighten that up first before we really take a deeper dive into getting more of the shared revenue from the state. But I do think, yes, we should get more.
Do you believe there's a shortage of affordable housing in Milwaukee?
So when I hear that question, when I say affordable housing, it's affordable to someone, right? It's just the people that are in the community that can't afford it. And when I hear that, I hear that we need more jobs that pay, that can give a family supporting wage so that they can afford the housing. So no, it's not affordable, but it's not affordable because we don't have people that are trained and ready for the jobs. And I have solutions to get people trained and ready, and to bring companies here that pay family supporting wages so that people can get affordable housing.
Well, do you believe that the city of Milwaukee's downtown revitalization initiative contributed to the Northside's affordable housing disparity?
I do. I think, I drive Lyft on the side, right? And I'm glad I do it because I meet so many different people and I really see how the city moves and what's going on. And so what I'm seeing is it looks like we've catered to the young professionals, those that are 21, older, graduated college, and we built up downtown, but we didn't build up the inner city. We have structures downtown that, and there are people that are moving in. I'm talking to people, and where are you from? New York? Whoa, and you came to Milwaukee, really? Yeah, I love it here. So they're living downtown, but the people in the inner city that's been here all their life, they're not getting those jobs. And so I think we really need to really focus on the infrastructure in the inner city and get people. We should have taken a deeper dive into the inner city to make sure that people are equipped to be able to take advantage of what's going on downtown. But we just poured all those resources down in there, and there's new people coming in that's taking advantage. And I do think that us pouring all our money downtown before really trying to take care of the inner city, I think that has hurt the prospects of individuals affording housing. So I think we need to take a look at our approach and really take care of home first.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Will you push through the budget or legislative process to have the state provide financing to create Milwaukee jobs to remove lead laterals that are disproportionately poisoning Black and brown children?
So I want to solve this lead lateral issue as fast as possible. I consider it an emergency, and I'm kind of confused as to why it's not solved as of yet. Public health is first. We should know, even from this COVID experience, if we're not healthy, we can't have a good economy. So we need to take care of it. So yes, I would advocate for that. But also on our end, I think we need to explore all of our options. From my understanding, the mayor has a program, whereas if $1,500, you can get, the city will fix the house. It costs $1,500 that you have to pay back over 10 years. But apparently there are some investment property, people that have properties that are investment properties. They're not really fixing them up that fast, which makes sense to a degree because they're not the ones drinking the water. When I say makes sense, I don't mean it's right. It means that, they're not the ones that have to drink the water. I think we need to create initiatives that would push them into fixing it faster. Whereas maybe if they have to disclose, hey, we have lead pipes here, and those that do not have lead pipes are able to say, we don't have lead pipes, and you have to display it when you're going to do it for rent. We have lead pipes, so that they can really just get to it and get it fixed and start the program. Once they start it, then they don't have to put that anymore, because you have to pay it back over 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. But yes, we need a multifaceted approach. We need to get more creative on our end. And I think we also need to advocate for the state to assist with this as well, because the state mandated that we have this.
Well, thank you. My last question to you, which I've asked the others, are you a member of the NAACP? And if so, for how long?
At this time, I am not a member of this prestigious organization. I consider it an honor to be here. I'm thankful for what the NAACP has done over the years, because what the NAACP has done is paved the way for me to be able to come here and run for office and work and things of that nature. When it comes to being a member in the future, I'm not sure. I'm a person that I believe I need to really stay in my lane. And so at this time, I'm not sure if I would, but I definitely wouldn't mind checking into it and seeing what that would look like.
Well, thank you again very much for joining us this evening. I appreciate your candor, and we wish your candidacy well also.
Thank you, Mr. Randall.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Mr. Rogers.
How you doing, Mr. Randall?
I've been waiting to say that for a while.
I
I want to welcome Mr. Tim Rogers, who's the Congressional District number 4 candidate. Welcome. And you have 2 minutes to share with us what your vision is for Congressional District number 4.
Hi, my name is Tim Rogers, and thank you for having me on this Zoom. My vision for this district is to redevelop, bring new perspective to our community, unity, and a plan that whatever we do here will spread across the country. Laws as far as prison reform. I have a great prison reform plan that, because I'm a felon, I like to see felons' record expunged automatically after they complete their extended supervision or their time served. All the rights should be given back, Second Amendment right, and the right to vote, the right to run for local and state, federal offices, all that. I would like to bring that here, and I think that would help give each adult, whoever had some type of crime, the incentive to do better. That'll make the community, as a whole, do better, because there are felons all over the city and the country. So what I do in Congress would reflect across the country as well as here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you're our last candidate of the evening, and we have a list of questions for you to respond to. And I'll begin with, Do you believe that the U.S. federal government has done enough in the form of testing and contact tracing to reduce COVID-19 total cases and deaths?
It's done a lot. It's done a lot. It can do more as far as the funds that they're holding up. That's needed. The money that they're holding up from the public for closing down this country need to be released, and we need that type of assistance immediately. If they don't
Thank
do
you.
that, they're not doing enough.
Do you support the repeal of the Affordable Care Act?
That's the mandate and all that. I was in agreement with that. We needed that to be repealed, and we constantly are working on a better health care system. Even though Wisconsin is one of the best states for health care in the country, but we can always make it better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you support expansion of Medicaid in order to cover more low-income Milwaukeeans?
Sure. I don't see why not. If they're not covered, like I say, we have one of the best healthcare systems in the country. People are covered right now with the healthcare system we got in place. So it can always be improved.
All right. Switching tracks, would you support having a nonpartisan, independent redistricting commission to draft and implement electoral district maps?
The system they have in place already is okay. It's about the people redistricting. I mean, you got to get votes no matter who they come from. It's the people. So the redistricting is not going to make a big deal, one way or the other.
Here's a question that you've already given some articulation to. Do you support President Trump's criminal justice reforms? And do you think these reforms go far enough?
That's why I want to go to Congress to make sure they go further. What he's doing, I'm in agreement with it, but it can go further. That's why I'm going to Congress to work with him and the rest of the House of Representatives to make it better. There's always room for improvement. Like I explained earlier, I have plans for prison reform.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you believe that the federal opportunity zones have had any impact on economic development in the city of Milwaukee?
To a degree. I was talking to a young man who wants to open something, but he having problems with the city council, our aldermen, getting licensed in that opportunity zone. So we have to work together to make Milwaukee grow with those opportunity zones that President Trump put into place. We all have to work in one accord, and it will work.
So how much have cuts in HUD funding resulted in a lack of affordable housing on Milwaukee's north side?
That is a nice project that HUD has going on. It's been around for a while, and I think it'll continue to be around. It will get funded. I would support that, as well as the proper banking system to help go with that so that people can get those affordable houses, because we need affordable housing and we need to redo the housing system that we have already in the city.
And what do you believe can be done through the federal government, whether it be through the Clean Water Act or any other Environmental Protection Agency legislation, to remove lead laterals from the drinking water supply chain in over 70,000 homes in Milwaukee?
I would go to Congress and fight for that and make it a federal emergency that we get it taken care of. We don't want to happen what happened in Michigan to happen here. It shouldn't get that bad. The water situation has been bad since the 60s, and it's time to get something done about that. And I would advocate for that strongly in Washington and make it a federal emergency and get the job done immediately.
Well, finally, you're our last candidate to have this discussion with, and I'll ask you what I've asked all the other candidates. Are you a member of the NAACP? And if so, for how long?
No, I'm not a member of NAACP. My parents were. I talked to a member of the NAACP when I ran for Congress in 2018, and then he said, "We can't support you. You're Republican. I don't support Republican." I'm like, okay. So, I mean, I believe in the NAACP and some of the things they're doing, but I guess whoever was running it at that time came off real bad just because I'm a Republican. And I didn't think that was cool.
Fair answer. Well, I want to thank you for joining us this evening and sharing with us your ideas and your candidacy. And we wish you success in meeting up with the voters and sharing those ideas that you've shared with us tonight.
And there's
Good
a
luck.
lot more. There's a lot more, but time on, www.rogersforwisconsin. You can Google me. You can check out my website, and my number is all around the city. My name and number. I grew up here. I'm asking anyone can reach out to me and talk to me, and let's make it work. Let's move forward.
Well, that's a wonderful way for us to end. And thank you again very much for being with us this evening.